Homage to the Triple Gem. So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at the Dhamma-Pradipa Monastery, and they're building some new residences for lay meditators here. This is a kind of Goenka center, and it's been a nice stay here so far. And so one of the things, the topics that I've been thinking about lately is this topic of Sati, or mindfulness, which gets a lot of emphasis in the West. Mindfulness in the West can take on a number of different meanings. Generally, they all have to do with being in the present moment, but the most popular seems to be like this open, broad awareness that takes everything in, doesn't react to it, doesn't judge it. Mindfulness, as it's used in the Pali Canon, basically means the ability to keep something in mind. And it can be used in say like the Satipatthana formula in terms of keeping a particular theme or keeping a particular intellectual concept in mind, like a filter for the mind, as one's primary object of awareness while one is going through and interacting with other things. So you can have like the body as your Satipatthana, and then in whichever way a person interacts with the world, the body is the primary thing that they're relating to that input through. Somebody has a bad emotion, how does it affect the body? A good emotion, how does it affect the body? And what's the relationship of the body to these emotions? Why did they arise in relation? What's the body's relationship to these emotions arising? Because somebody said something bad about one, or somebody said something that might threaten one's job. Why are those things dangerous? Well, it's because I have a body and I need to feed it. So in these ways, one can use mindfulness to take a particular object and keep it in mind in the midst of one's experiences. That's one way that it can get used. Another way that it can get used is, and these things can overlap, is basically to keep an object in mind and not to pay attention to any other experiences at all. And so one can keep mindfulness of, say, like the in and out breath, and just have that as the focus, not be interpreting external events as they come through. An external event comes through, and one doesn't pay any attention to it at all, or one will just simply go back to the breath. And this is another way that one can employ mindfulness. So basically, mindfulness means this ability to keep something in mind. That's what it means in the canon. So a lot of what can cause people a lot of kind of stress or worry or anxiety or whatever it is during the day is actually things when they think about the future or they think about the past. Think about the future in terms of what's going to happen to me, things that they can't control, or they think about the past, which again are things that a person can't control because they're long gone. They can feel remorse about the past, anxiety about the future. And this can cause quite a lot of stress, quite a lot of suffering, especially to people in the modern world. I mean, one has to be able to rely on thinking about the future, and one has to be able to go back to thinking about the past just to kind of live a normal life. I mean, one has projects that one needs to do for one's workplace, or one needs to think, if one has kids, like what do they need to do on Friday? Like what do they need for lunch? What do I need for groceries? Like these are all things which require planning. But the thing about it is that this kind of planning, when one engages in it without any sense of what one is doing, getting absorbed into the planning of the future or thinking about the past, and it becomes like this habit that's very difficult to control. So the Buddha has this interesting word, which is papancha. Papancha means like proliferation or expansion, as Jnanadeepa Bhante would define it. So, in other words, you can take a particular concept, a particular thought, and then from that thought it jumps to another thought, and then another thought, and another thought, and it just expands into this whole world of experience, which oftentimes is not really accurate. The worries that one has about the future are usually not accurate. The worries that the remorse that one has about the past is often distorted. It can be amplified through a lens where it's repeated again and again, and it gets stronger with every feedback. So this expansion, this papancha, is something that can cause quite a lot of suffering. So one of the things that the Buddha recommends is this delight in nippapancha. Nippapancha means not expanding, not proliferating. Another translation for that is objectifying. Like one makes oneself into an object and then relates to everything else as objects that essentially become part of one's being. Either one doesn't want it, it's not part of one's being, or one wants it, it's part of one's being. And in doing this, one creates an identity that's basically always under threat. It's never something which is really that stable or really that safe. So one of the counters to this is to use sati in this way in which one is staying in the present moment. And this type of sati in the canon is called sati sampajanya. Sati being mindfulness, sampajanya is sometimes translated as clear comprehension. Maybe the most kind of simple translation and simple and accurate, that one that I like anyway, is Ajahn Thinasro's of sampajanya as alertness. So in other words, it's keeping in mind this quality of being alert, aware what's going on right now. So you can have sati, you can have mindfulness and be mindful, thinking about the past. This is how it was in the past and it's impermanent. Actually, that is a type of perception that the Buddha recommends. You can be mindful about the future, thinking of things about the future. In the future I'll die in this way. There's all these different ways in which I could pass away, and it's not certain. So I better do what's good to do right now. So this sati coupled with sampajanya, this basically means this alertness, just being alert to what it is one's doing right now. As one is kind of going through the day, as one is walking, as one is standing, whatever one is doing, one tries to be alert to that. It's kind of just being in the present moment, doing what one is doing. Now this is something that can actually take quite a lot of work. There's kind of the natural tendency of the mind is to rush out towards the future and to rush back towards the past, and to create this really elaborate world of perceptions. This is how I am now, this is how I will be in the future, this is how I was in the past. And this is its natural tendency. So to stop the expansion, to stop the proliferation, one has to cut the thread as it's starting to expand. One's mind launches out to the future. I want to do this in the future, this is how it'll be. One has to cut it and just go back to what it is that one is doing at the present moment. And if there's nothing in particular that one needs to do, then one can just focus in on one's breath, just trying to get more and more into the present, more and more minute sometimes into the present moment. So there's a kind of an irony to this, because this is work, but at the same time it can make the mind more peaceful. When one is not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, but is anchored in the present, there's not actually that much to worry about. Like moment to moment, it's not some overwhelming chore, like some overwhelming ordeal. I mean, just this word, it's not that hard to speak, right? It's kind of just this movement. I mean, there's not much suffering in me just doing this. Now, if I start thinking to myself, okay, I'm giving this talk, I'm going to have to give, how many more talks do I have to give in my life? Going to take that on as some kind of a burden or something like that. I mean, it can seem like a lot, but if it's just this word, just this sentence, just this step, there's not a lot of stress in that. And when one focuses in this way, what can happen is the mind settles down. So the Buddha sometimes gives comparisons to these 5 hindrances in terms of like a bowl of water that's like boiling if one's angry, or grown over with moss, or colored with dye, depending on what kind of thing it is that stirs the mind up. So when the mind goes off to the future and is thinking about the future, it's getting stirred up. It's getting attached to things that are not there and that are moving. The mind is moving as it expands. And it goes back to the past. It's moving as it recollects, as it reminisces. But if one tries to make it more and more in the present, it gets less and less agitated and becomes more and more still. And the paradox of these things is that stillness is something peaceful, is something easeful, and it's an ease that can start small but grow larger. The tricky thing about this type of ease is that one has to pay for it. It's because, it can be really nice. It can be kind of, not really nice, but kind of fun or entertaining to, come up with scenarios in one's head, big plans in one's head for the future, or head back to the past and think about that, worry about that. But these things ultimately are things that we lose, which cause us to lose control of our mind, lose control of the narrative, that we're like spinning a web that we get stuck in a web of our own design. And then, the mind becomes sad or upset or angry or whatever it is because of this future we've created, because of this past we're back to, and can't get out of that web that we've built by thinking about these things and by building up our present based on them. So this Sati Sampajanya, this mindfulness and clear comprehension, is a really important skill for basically any practitioner to develop, because what we're trying to do is develop dispassion towards things, and kind of, why is it that I like this? And investigating these things, why is it that I'm so attached to the body? Why is it that I'm so attached to life? What is it that causes me to suffer? Like, how come I'm so hooked into all these various things and addicted, and can't let go of my love for this and that thing, even though I know in the end it will desert me, it will cause me to suffer. This kind of thinking, this kind of investigation can lead to dispassion, but it's also a little bit stressful. So it's good to have this skill of being able to make the mind settle and not think about anything, even those things, and kind of just to be in the present moment without really any responsibilities beyond that. And there's not a big burden here in the present moment. There's not a big worry here in the present moment. It's just the present moment. It's just one little thing, one thing at a time. And it's generally not so bad. So as the mind settles down, one can become more and more peaceful, more and more at ease. And without these mental burdens of the future or the past, one can become more efficient in the things that one does. So in the West, this is why some people like mindfulness. You become more peaceful, and you can go out and do a better job at one's work, or be more funny in a conversation or witty in a conversation, or whatever it is. But what we want to do when the mind is peaceful and easeful like this is invested in trying to find out the causes that are there. What is the cause that's making me suffer? What are the causes in place that I'm not seeing that are causing me to get tripped up over and over again? And this is the really important thing to know, and the really important thing to put an end to. So this spreading out to the future and going back to the past, it can be something that seems kind of fun. But as one tries to get more and more familiar with the present moment, one can see that this is a place of ease. This is a place where one can develop happiness. And it's a happiness that's worth developing, because it can give us the strength to see what it is that's holding us back in our path, and to eliminate it so that we can find a happiness that's stable.